Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bear Dash. I'm Shaylin.
I'm Jasper.
And the Pac-12 is back, and that means Cal football is as well. Eventually, it'll get here in November, but we want to start talking about it as early as we can. We've been doing it, and we will continue to. So the Bears don't come back for quite a few weeks, but the conference has said that it's going to be a 7-game season. The schedule should be released sometime this week, we hope. But to start off with, just broadly, it's been highly debated. People give their different reasons. Jasper, why did the Pac-12 really come back?
Yeah, so there were a lot of folks. There was a press conference with Larry Scott when they announced their return, and as you would expect, a lot of folks on that press conference were focusing on player demands, players wanting to return, on the fact that they can make the CFP if they could return. There was a bit of an unprompted soundbite from President Schill of Oregon. He said that it really wasn't about the money. No one asked him about the money, but he felt it was necessary to make that statement. That being said, I think from a lot of the impression I've gotten from a lot of folks I've talked to is that this was about giving the Pac-12 a chance to make a CFP, putting them back in the college football playoff mix, giving a team, potentially either USC or Oregon, a shot at the national championship. Because as a lot of you probably already know, the CFP committee was going ahead with its decision date of December 20th. The new schedule will have a Pac-12 champion by December 19th, and that champion would then be in the mix for a CFP spot. That being said,
with that being said, I honestly believe that the guys at the Pac-12, the executives, Larry Scott, I think they know the chances of making the CFP are extremely slim. The reason they did it is because they wanted to be eligible, and they wanted to be able to say that a team could make it. I think I've given my take on this before. For a Pac-12 team, whether it be Oregon, USC, whoever, to make the CFP, I think they would need to go undefeated, first of all, but also I don't think they can really have any close losses. You got to win by like 10, 15 points a game. I think that's the only way the CFP would consider a Pac-12 team to make it. But it's a pride thing for the Pac-12. They wanted to say they at least gave their teams a chance. You know, the whole Pac-12 Conference of Champions thing, they like to throw that around. It hasn't really been the case for, high revenue sports lately, but they want to give their teams a shot. And I think it's more that than the fact that they actually think someone can make the CFP.
Yeah. And as you pointed out, the Pac-12, especially Pac-12 football, has not exactly been, let's call it, competitive on the national stage as of late. I think a non-season here, a postponed season, the inability to compete in the CFP would have just continued that narrative. The problem is it could still continue if a Pac-12 team doesn't show up. For me, though, I think that's the reason that's been put forward. Another reason that's been put forward both by people inside the Pac-12 and the players is just the pressure from players. I've seen a lot of points being made that player safety needs to be taken into consideration, and I think it does. But I also think there were a lot of players who really did want to play, who were very vocal about that. A lot of people remember the letter sent by USC players to Governor Newsom, which I would argue kickstarted this whole process. Several Cal players have been vocal on social media trying to get this season up and running. You saw the response from a lot of Cal players, from guys like Garbers, Remigio, Elijah Hicks, when this season was announced. They're excited and they want to be here. And I think without that, this wouldn't have happened. I think that plays a critical role as well.
So they got a lot of the health, askings that they had in their first We Are United movement pitch to the Pac-12. They got a lot of those, the daily testing. We can hit on that later. That's all great work by the Pac-12 to make it healthy and possible to play. But one thing I'm kind of wondering that I don't think there's really an answer to, but what happened to the rest of that? Those demands that players were threatening to opt out, and then the Pac-12 said there was no season, and then all of a sudden it seemed like the players were almost just begging to get back on the field in whatever way they could, because it seems like everyone just kind of swept those demands of not cutting any sports or taking revenue from the coaches and splitting it evenly and things like that. All the all the financial demands that they had to the Pac-12. Is that something that you see as just maybe we'll take a look at it next season, or what? Because in my eyes, it's just the players were so desperate to play that they honestly kind of stopped caring about that stuff for now and just wanted to get on the field because everyone else in the country was.
Yeah, I think there definitely is an aspect of peer pressure here, of seeing the rest of the country get back to play, of wanting to participate in that, and knowing that they could do it safely. I think that matters. And for what it's worth, from what I've seen, this is too soon to tell. We'll have to see how the Pac-12 and schools actually do in terms of testing, in terms of social distancing. Um, I think the Pac-12 is doing this in a safe way. I think there are holes in everything. It's a pandemic. Nothing is ever 100% safe. I think, given what the Pac-12 has, it's putting forward a feasible project. In footballs, can come back in a safe way, which I think was very important to a lot of players. I do think there are other things the Pac-12 could have done. You talked about the other We Are United demands for greater racial equity, demands for a greater share of the profits, any share of the profits, really. As things that are being swept under the rug. Players definitely had an opportunity here to step up and negotiate. I mean, they had a lot of leverage. There's a pandemic. But
I think, yeah, I think with that pandemic, though, that makes a lot of these demands even way less feasible than they already were, because it was already going to be tough for the Pac-12 to be able to give some of its revenue to the players, because they're already, like, the team takes such a loss already. College athletic departments, especially in the Pac-12, are not doing well at all. And now you're dishing out, I think the contract with Quidel, who's doing the rapid testing, is somewhere around $300,000 a week, if I'm not mistaken. So that's even more money lost that could have, I guess, potentially been going to the players. But so I think it just wasn't feasible this season to be able to take those financial demands into consideration. But you mentioned the rapid testing. I think the Pac-12 is doing a fairly good job in terms of the health requirements. Obviously, there was some miscommunications with Gavin Newsom. Apparently, that was their excuse, that Pac-12 football was never not allowed to play. But they've done their due diligence now. At least it seems like they've paired with another testing provider, Fulgent, who's going to have more sensitive and specific tests than rapid testing. So it'll mean less false positives or false negatives, which we've seen it happen with the Tennessee Titans like a couple days ago. They're going to have to skip a whole game. I guess they're delaying it till later, because all it takes is one person to mess up, and then you come to practice or hang out with the team before practice, and boom, like half your team has it and you can't play. So it's going to be all about limiting that, and having Quidel and now Fulgent together helps with that. It's going to be way easier to do contact tracing, things like that. It seems like a safe option in my eyes. My main worry, though, is just there's no real way to control what these athletes do in their day-to-day lives, because they're not in a bubble. You know, if they want to go on like a Tinder date, no one is there to stop them, really. And that's a lot of responsibility, seriously, for a college kid. I mean, there's the Titans; those are pro players, like that's their job, and they still somehow got COVID, and they're done now. But that's a lot of responsibility on college kids to take care of their own risks and not put their team at risk. So I just am very interested to see if that's going to play out successfully or not.
Yeah, I think this absolutely, whether this is a good idea or not, is going to completely depend on how the players handle it. To the credit of a lot of teams, a lot of Pac-12, at least the conversations we've been able to have with Justin Wilcox and Jim Knowlton at Cal, it both sounds like they're treating this like an opt-in for players. They're being extremely generous. Eligibility isn't being affected. Scholarships aren't being affected. This is really up to the players. But for the players that do come back, it's on you. You have to prove that this was a good idea. You have to be responsible and do this responsibly and safely, because otherwise it's a bad idea. I think with a lot of COVID-19 things, it's if it works, if no one gets hurt, it's fine. But there is a risk involved, and players need to step up and be responsible. if this is going to succeed. You need to prove that this was worth it and that this just isn't a waste of resources and a waste of time.
Yeah. Regardless, either way, there's going to be definitely some hindsight bias. The season goes down the drain, people are going to say, I told you so. We're playing amidst a pandemic. And if the season goes well, they're going to say we should have started earlier and played a 10-game season. But, I mean, I'm inclined
Absolutely.
to say it's a good idea off the bat what the Pac-12 is doing. I mean, sure, maybe they could have started a little earlier, but I would rather meet in the middle and know that the players, like, they have it planned out to keep the players safe and just go about the season, and I guess you see what happens. Would you say the same thing? Are you on board with it? Because I know there's still a fair bit of people who say there should not be a season, especially of some of these Pac-12 teams and the cities.
I think it's tricky. I think, given the fact, and I've said this before and this, I'm going to say it again, that they're doing the season, they're doing it well. I think there are a lot of other phenomenal things the Pac-12 could have done. We talked about meeting those other We Are United demands. I know there's budget shortfalls. A big part of the revenue from football is going to go towards other sports and enable them to compete. But it says a lot when you're relying on the unpaid labor of athletes to run your athletics programs. I also think there's an opportunity for the Pac-12 to give back to campuses. A lot of these schools in the Pac-12 are facing their own budget shortfalls, are facing their own campus needs. There are vulnerable student populations on campus that need resources. And I know that the allocation isn't perfect. The Pac-12 is very much its own entity, but there's an opportunity to give back in ways which I think were unprecedented, and which could have sent a massive message from the athletics world that it's not just about sports, it's about more. That didn't happen. I wouldn't say that was ever realistic and on the table. But there were opportunities to get back to the We Are United demands, to get back to campus communities that, as unrealistic as they are, could have happened. They didn't. We are where we are now. And I will say, I think this has been planned well. I think there's definitely an opportunity to pull off a safe season here. And I think that is important for the players too.
Yeah. So assuming the season happens, the way it's going to work for the Pac-12 is that each team is going to play 5 division games. So Pac-12 North, Pac-12 South, and there's going to be one non-conference game sprinkled in there. No one really knows where in the schedule yet or who it's going to be. They're keeping us in suspense, even though Larry Scott said there should have been a schedule a few days after the press conference, which was more than a few days ago. But after that, week 7 of the season is going to be cross-division games where the seeds are aligned. So the top 2 seeds, or the first seed in each division, are going to play for the Pac-12 title, and then the 2 seeds are going to play each other, 3 seeds, etc. So a lot of people with this free time the Pac-12 have given us to brainstorm have been thinking of what schedules might best suit their teams. And it's different for a lot of teams, because if you're Oregon State or something, you probably just want some wins, right? There's no tanking in college football. You want some wins. But if you're USC or Oregon, you want wins, but you also need some wins against quality opponents, because if you're one of those teams, you think you might have an outside chance at the CFP. For Cal, though, what does the ideal schedule look like to you? And you can take, however you want. You can list out specific games or just themes. What would define a good schedule in your eyes?
Yeah, well, we've talked about Cal potentially having higher expectations this season than they've had in years past. I'll admit I put a damper on those expectations in the past. I'm going to start shedding that mantle. I changing those expectations, and y'all will see in a minute why. But for me here, if you're a team like Cal, if you're a team like Oregon, USC, where you really think you can challenge the top upper tiers of this conference, you need to be playing some of the better teams in the conference. I think Cal's gotten past the stage where it's just looking for a win. The Bears are now looking to make a name for themselves in this conference. And to do that, for that crossover game, for one of those crossover games, you're going to need to be playing someone like USC, Utah, or ASU. I think those are the top 3 schools in the Pac-12 South. You want to play at least one of them this season if you're Cal. You want that challenging game, especially against a team like USC or Utah, who you've really struggled, or ASU for that matter. I mean, those are all games I think Cal lost last season, and you want to come in and prove that, hey, you're a new team, you've improved, you can take them on.
So are you saying one of those three teams we seeded games, or are you saying before that? Because theoretically, Cal could play UCLA in the first 6 games, end up seeded top 3 in the North, and then play one of those top 3 teams in week 7? Or do you think playing one of those top tier South teams is important even early on in the season?
So my personal prediction, I think it would be great to play one of those teams early on, but I have both a personal prediction and a personal desire here. I think Cal will play UCLA. I think the Pac-12 won't mess with that rivalry. I think there are too many fans on either side who want to see the UC schools go at it. I think there are plenty of people in Berkeley who want Cal to go prove its mettle. I think there are plenty of people down in Los Angeles who want UCLA to do the same. And so I think that's a tough match to pass up. I mean, these are two obvious rivals. I'm not going to say it's as bitter as the big game, but there's no love lost between them. I could see Cal playing like someone like ASU in that week 7 game. If Cal's able to run the table, I could see Cal playing someone a bit higher up. For me, though, I do have a very specific proposal. See, we don't know if a Pac-12 team is going to make the CFP. We don't know if they're going to be bowl games. We don't really know what we're playing for here, per se. So why not have all 4 of the California teams play each other? They usually do, by the way. It's sort of a mandated thing in the schedule. All 4 California teams will play each other. So Cal will always play Stanford, UCLA, and USC, and then play a smattering of other Pac-12 South teams. But give us a trophy for those 4 teams to compete for, and that like a multi-way California rivalry. Listen here. You have Florida has one. You have the Florida Cup. Whenever Miami, Florida State, and Florida play each other in the same season, the best team there will get a trophy, the team that comes out with the best record amongst the 3. The most famous one is obviously the Commander-in-Chief's trophy between Army, Navy, and Air Force, right? The team that comes out with the best record there gets a very big trophy. So have one for California. I mean, these schools hate each other already. You won't find a Cal fan who says, yeah, I'm going to root for Stanford, UCLA, and USC this weekend. They don't. And I don't imagine any other fan at those schools is going to do the same. There are plenty of entrenched rivalries, so give them something to compete over in a season that could be cut short because of COVID, where there's not a ton to play for. If you can work it so all 4 teams play each other and the team that comes out on top gets a California Cup, if you will, I think that just enhances it. That spices up a season that's maybe flagging a little bit in terms of things to compete for.
It's possible if UCLA is the team that Cal's matched up with in the first 6 games, and then maybe Cal has a pretty good record and plays USC in week 7, or the opposite, somehow Cal has a disastrous season and then plays UCLA in week 7. It could happen, and definitely not out of the question. But let's start early in the season, week 1. Pretend it's a Pac-12 North team. What do you think would be better for Cal? To play a harder opponent early when someone like Oregon hasn't had the chance to build chemistry with their fully new offensive line, new quarterback? Or would you go the flip and have Cal play a team like Oregon State that's maybe an easier win, but it gives Cal the chance to build chemistry, new offensive scheme, get some of those defensive starters who are going to be brand new, get them some reps? Which one do you see is better? Because I'm more inclined that Cal needs to start off with a weak team, get acclimated to the offensive scheme, have the defense shake off the rust, play someone like Washington State or Oregon State would be my ideal. But right after that, I think you could get right into it with UW or Oregon. What say you?
I'm very much in the same boat there, but for a different reason. My focus is entirely on the offense here. I think as much turnover or recent turnover, at least, Cal has had on the defensive side of the ball, with Beckett transferring, with Bynum opting out. Those defenders are still with coaches they've been with for a while. And I know there was coaching turnover on the defensive side of the ball, but the scheme is the same. Those guys know where they are, even if they haven't had as much experience on the field. They know what they're up to. And I trust Cal's defense. Cal's offense is in a new scheme. There's going to be rust. I want to be, or if I'm a Cal fan, if I'm a Cal player, I want to be playing someone with a weak defense where I can just get into it, get my feet wet, have a chance to make some low-cost mistakes, and maybe put some points on the board and get a nice win. So, yeah, that's Oregon State. That's Washington State. Maybe that's someone like Stanford. I think teams like UW and Oregon, whose strong suit really is the defensive side of the ball, could be trouble. Not because I think they're particularly good, well-rounded teams. I think UW will be good. There's concerns there. I think Oregon is very good, but it's not because they're a good team. It's because they're a good defense. That's where the point of concern is for me.
And then in terms of those two strong teams, one thing I don't want to see is playing UW and Oregon back-to-back, because this is such a short season, 7 games. This team needs rest with no bye weeks, and something that Wilcox doesn't tend to do, but I think he might do this season, is rest starters if Cal goes up big in a game. He never really does that. Cal could be up, not that there were many games like this, but if Cal was up 23 possessions or so, he usually would keep the starters in. And I think in a game where you don't have bye weeks and every game really matters and you need to win those games, I think maybe he'll pull some of those starters and give some other players experience. So that's something to look out for. Is you don't want to see anyone with a stretch of tough games in a 7-game season, because that's not good news. But other than that, we can move on to our last subject, which is what should the new expectations be for Cal? Because we weren't necessarily expecting a 7-game season, but regardless of how many games were in this season, this was supposed to be a big year for Cal. And there have been some unexpected changes with Cam Bynum and Luke Beckett leaving the team, although Cam Bynum can still come back, and I'm not saying he will, but I'm saying he can. Please, if you're listening, Cam.
If your name's Cam Bynum, you gotta be looking at Shaylin Singh's Twitter.
Yeah. But so have expectations changed with this season format with those players gone? What do you see for Cal?
Look, I've been the rain on the parade. Shall we put it that way? I think in the past I said that, like, hey, COVID does change your season's expectations. The turnover on defense does change your season's expectations. You can't expect as much. But here's the deal. In a 7-game season with so much chaos, so much potential for the flip of the coin playing a big role for luck and chance, making themselves felt on the field, I think Cal can make the CFP. That's a big call, but I think California can make the CFP. All right. I'm not just playing whatever NCAA football on my PS2. I'm telling you, Cal can make the CFP. There's a lot of reasons I think that. But before I get into those, Shaylin, what do you think Cal's going to do with this?
No, please list those reasons. Get into
all right. We'll go here. First of all, I know you said in the past that you don't think a Pac-12 team can make the CFP. I heartily disagree. And for me, the only reason is outside the conference, your normal CFP contenders are going to lose plenty of games. Look, LSU and Oklahoma have already lost a game. They played what, like 1 and 2 games? Like LSU's 0-1, Oklahoma's 1-1. I don't think they'll lose a ton of games, but that right there already knocks them down a rank in terms of getting into the CFP. Alabama is going to have to play Georgia. Clemson's going to have to play Notre Dame and a resurgent Miami team. Notre Dame's going to have to play Miami too. My point here is that plenty of CFP contenders have much tougher schedules in terms of playing other CFP contenders than they usually do. The way ACC and SEC schedules are usually structured, the best teams can kind of pass each other in the night until they get to the championship game, which gives them an opportunity to put forward multiple undefeated teams to be in contention for the CFP. That's not going to be the case this year. You're not going to have multiple undefeated teams out of the SEC. Now they actually have difficult conference schedules. And I'm not throwing any shade at the past, except I totally am. And that creates an opportunity for an undefeated Pac-12 team to toss their name in the mix. Now, why would that team be Cal? Because for me, when I look at this Pac-12 North schedule, with the exception of that Oregon game, I think these are 4 games that Cal can absolutely win. In fact, I'd say they're almost favored in all of them. Oregon State, Washington State, those are teams Cal's beaten in the past. Those are teams Cal should beat this season. Stanford, Cal beat them last season. Cal feels like a very, very much an up-and-coming team. Stanford's lost Walker Little, their best player. UW is very strong side, but again, Cal's beat him 2 years in a row. I don't really feel like this year should be super different, and that's just some chance in the Oregon game. Then, yeah, the coin flip can go against Cal. We don't know who they're going to play from the Pac-12 South, but for me, every game could potentially be winnable. If Chase Garbers can avoid injury, if Cal can get a bit of luck on their side, you finish 7-0, you look at chaos in the SEC, chaos in the ACC, suddenly you're in.
Yeah, so those are all fair points. I'm not going to say they're likely at all, but this is weird for me because I'm normally, when I'm talking Cal football with people, I'm 90% of the time, I'm the more optimistic one in the room. But I just don't see that. I don't see that for anyone in the Pac-12. We can get into whether you think a Pac-12 team could potentially make it with one loss. I don't think that's the case at all, but my expectation for this Cal team is pretty simple. It's 5-2. I think Cal is going to lose one of the conference or one of the division games. Don't know who it's going to be. Could be UW or Oregon, but Cal never fails to let us down with an easy game that they should have won. And it happens every season. I feel like it'll probably happen again. And then you talk about those out of division games. That assuming Cal does well in division, that week 7 game is going to be tough. Teams like ASU, Utah, or USC, those games are kind of coin flips too. Cal is probably on par with all three, but at that point in the season, there's injuries and there's, people have momentum. Cal could be on a losing streak. We've seen the 7-game season is also as a lot of the times we've seen Cal start the season 3-0 and then lose their first 3 or 4 conference games, which that could very well Cal could just start with losing conference games.
That would end your season.
But that's just not, it's not going to happen. But I think no matter how many games we're in this season, I saw Cal winning around 3/4 of their games, which is definitely a step up from last season. I think fans will be happy with that regardless. I know there's plenty of fans who are hoping for a Pac-12 championship appearance, especially with all the turnover at Oregon happening, with all those players opting out and just the offensive line and Herbert gone from the start. But I agree with you that the Pac-12 is pretty wide open and Cal has a chance to be near the top. But just this defense, not having non-conference games is scary this season because that would always give the new starters a chance to get acclimated. In this case, the offense get acclimated to the scheme. And I have 100% confidence that the coaching staff is able to develop star players and quality starters. The problem with this season is there's no time to develop them. You're talking about replacing 6 extremely talented starters on the defensive side, and they're having a shortened camp and no non-conference games. I don't think the defense has enough developed chemistry at this point for Cal to go undefeated.
Yeah, and I'm not saying Cal is going to make the CFP. In fact, if I had to gun to my head, money on the line, I'm not sure I'd bet that way. I'm just saying I think it's a distinct possibility and one which a lot of people are underestimating. Let me put it this way: I would not be surprised if they did. That being said,
you wouldn't be surprised if Cal made the college football playoff.
No, I would not be surprised. You just heard me call it. I mean, I don't know what more do you want from me. I'll be there December 20th, looking very pleased with myself, shall we say. That said, I wouldn't be surprised if Cal finished 3-4. I feel like there's a lot of leeway here. But my end point is there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of chaos that's going to be involved. It's going to be a season unlike any other. If there was ever a season where Cal would make the Rose Bowl, it would be one with no Rose Parade and no fans. Like, let's be clear. That would be the Cal Rose Bowl.
All right, there we have it, folks. Jasper has said his words. That is all the time we have for today. We got to shut him up now before he says anything else. But we are Dash Sports TV. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. We are also partners with sportspac12.com now. We're posting all our exclusive columns there now, so check them out too. And we'll see you guys next week.